Hello, everyone. Welcome to Question Everything, a podcast all about learning from the successes and the failures of those who dare to, well, question everything. This podcast is part interview, part therapy, and part Price is Right. We have our own game board stacked with questions that'll make even the most successful CMOs sweat. I'm your host, Ashley Walters, CMO and partner at Curiosity. On today's episode, I sit down with Luz Corona, editor at Campaign US, known for being tough but fair on the industry's top happenings and running the highly coveted Campaign Agency of the Year Awards. On this episode, you'll learn what immediately sends your pitch to the trash, 4 things every winning agency has in their award submissions, why Luz thinks the industry is in its indie era, and the one thing we all really want to know, do Ad Age, Adweek, and Campaign really get along? So delete that draft and prepare to start from scratch. Luz is running a masterclass on how to win big with the press. Luz Corona is a seasoned media and marketing leader whose career spans agency execution, brand storytelling, and advertising journalism. Now the U.S. editor of Campaign, she brings an operator meets editor lens, pairing deep industry experience with cultural insight to elevate the stories shaping modern marketing. She's also one of the hosts of the Campaign Chemistry podcast. Previously, Luz was a community editor at Adweek, where she led DE&I initiatives and co-hosted its flagship podcast. Before that, she worked in media buying and content, supporting brands like Coca-Cola, JP Morgan Chase, and General Mills. Always the host, rarely the subject, we're excited to finally put Luz Corona in the spotlight. Luz, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ashley. I'm going to need you to intro me when I come into any room, I think, from now on. That was great.
I will be your hype girl. I am so excited for this. I've been anticipating this conversation for so long. You're always on the other side of the mic. How does it feel to be on this side?
Pretty nerve-wracking, but I hope I can do you guys proud.
Oh, I have no worries. Now, tomorrow's a big day.
It is. It is. A lot of things.
What's happening? What's the big event tomorrow? I'll be in New York. My flight's at 7 a.m., so I'll be at the airport probably at 4, I guess. But I'll see you tomorrow night.
We will have a good time. It'll be worth it. Tomorrow is our Agency of the Year Awards, always a really fun, festive night. So we're just getting ready, putting the final touches on the write-ups and everything, going live after the show. So yeah, it'll be a good night.
Congratulations. The competition this year is so fierce. Do you feel that? Like in
Yeah.
every category, it's like
Yeah.
stacked.
Yeah, when I saw the short list and the finalists, I was like, whoa, like it was really great to see. And we introduced 9 new categories this year too, because the landscape is changing so much. So I'm excited for those winners to also emerge.
That's great. And one thing that I think sets your award up that's different than some of the others are the judges. Can you speak a little bit about that whole process?
Yeah, for sure. So what I love about how we judge at Campaign is there's a jury of esteemed marketers. I mean, for our honorifics, like 40 over 40 and inspiring women, it's past honorees. But for Agency of the Year, it's top brand marketers. I mean, I don't think we had anyone under SVP. It was like SVP, a lot of CMOs across different brands, across different verticals. And they are tasked with first doing a first round, looking online, kind of putting their scores in there. And then this year we did a virtual live judging to finalize, the finalists there.
So cool. Well, I can say as past winners, past standout agency, the award means a lot to us. It means a lot to the industry. So thanks for all you do to support all of us out there.
Yeah, no, thank you. I know it's a little like I have to say it's funny because I know we're one of the few awards that doesn't tell agencies in advance, and we're getting the texts, we're getting the emails like, can you tell us, things like that. But I think it's to be in the room the night of and see people genuinely surprised when their name is called makes it so worth it. And, if you think about like can awards or things like that, people don't know in advance, if they're getting it. So the surprise element is so worth it.
Love that. Okay, I didn't even text you or call you or ask, so I feel like I'm winning there.
Yes,
I did
thank
ask you
you.
to come on the podcast though, so
Totally fine.
I'll take it. All right, well, you know how this show works. I've got 12 questions. I've got a game board. You don't know what's behind each of the numbers. The power is totally in your hands. We'll pull up the game board now, and then you can tell us which number you want to go to first.
Number 8.
Okay. I know there's some psychology behind numbers here. One day I'm going to do a study in it, I swear. All right, so I'm curious about this. You know, a big group of listeners we have are actually client side. And so I'm curious from your perspective, from like a journalist perspective and a press perspective, is great creative on its own enough to win awards, win press, without sharing the business results? And why do you think CMOs should be a bit more vocal about sharing some of their biggest wins?
Well, I think yes, I think great creative can be strong enough even if it's, like, without the business results, just because of the innovation out there. I mean, strong creative will always be inspiring and might spark inspiration to other creatives, and things like that. It's obviously today it's all about, I know some people hate the performance marketing, either you love it or you hate it, the term, but it's all about like the business results and things like that, of course, because marketing budgets have kind of plateaued, right? So everybody has to make sure that they're really contributing to the bottom line. But there are just some executions out there that just hit the nail on the head when it comes to understanding consumers and just having something fun, and like it could totally be more for a brand awareness play, and that still counts. And then the second one, what was the latter question? I had an
Just
answer
should
for that.
CMOs, be willing, do you think, to share more? I mean, we hear a lot like, we don't want to spill our secrets. We don't want people to know. Like, I'm curious your take on the press side of it. There's real benefit to sharing the work and sharing your stories. What do you say to them?
I completely agree. I mean, I think we could all learn from each other. One thing that I wish CMOs would be a little more honest about are just the failures
Mm.
and the lessons learned. I think it's you're never too, like, I think that's really incredibly self-aware, and just kind of be like, look, we tried this, it didn't work. We learned for next time. And maybe like if there's a successful campaign after that, they can talk about the one that was before that didn't really work out. But I think just being a little bit more honest about the failures, because every brand has them,
Yeah.
so that I would love to see. But yeah, CMOs can always learn from each other.
That's great. I had a guest on the show, Kelly Leonard. He's really high up at Second City. I love improv. And he told me a story of how he had a really big failure. It was well written. And he actually printed it off, hung it up in his office, and like stared at it all the time as like a reminder. And he's like, people care actually more about your failures than they do your successes. And so I always thought that was really fascinating. But that's great advice. I think it's hard sometimes for CMOs to be vulnerable. I think the position is very volatile. I don't even know what the average tenure is anymore, but it feels like it's just constantly dropping, 18 months, maybe, maybe less now. And so maybe that could be in part why they're not as willing to share.
For sure. And I think also, I mean, CMOs now, it's like, the term that's going around is CMO plus, and
Yeah.
everybody has, it's not just that role that was like even like 2 or 3 years ago, like either you're a chief brand and marketing officer or you're a chief growth officer, or, we're seeing CMOs go up to president roles, or CEO roles now. So there's such a wealth of expertise to be shared there, good and bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. CMO plus.
CMO plus.
I like that. We'll start seeing that on LinkedIn, I bet. All right, let's go back to the board.
Okay. I'm gonna go with an odd
No
number,
way.
number 5.
Number 5, shocked. What is one conversation you think the industry should be having right now, but it isn't?
Are we okay? I
Hmm.
sometimes I really wonder if we are all okay. Like with, I'm just thinking about it. I'm like, surely it can't just be on the journalism or press side, that we're seeing the news and things like that, feeling certain way some days. But there's so much. turmoil going on now. And not to like even, hype up the headlines or any like kind of like clickbait kind of thing. I really think there's genuinely a lot of change. We've seen the layoffs. AI is coming into play, and people are genuinely like excited and scared about it if it kind of takes off too fast or gets in the wrong hands. So, with all the, and not to get like political, but just a lot going on in the outside world right now that I wonder. Obviously, advertising is great. I love advertising. Every spot, every out of home billboard, things like that. But there are moments where it's just like, okay, but this is the world is burning down outside, or,
Mm.
maybe personal life got a little crazy one week over the other. And it's just, I don't know if we're asking each other enough, like, are we okay?
Mm. That's a very profound question. I like that. And I mean, as a employee and a friend, we do need to ask each other that more. But then I put on my employer hat, and what are employers doing to go above and beyond and make sure their people feel supported and taken care of and have space to think and be and, get their hands dirty and be in the community and do all of those other aspects that make them a whole human. Are you hearing anything on your end of how like agencies are kind of stepping up right now, or anything come to mind like that?
Yeah, I think the ones that kind of stand out to me are the leaders like such as yourself just being super conscious of it, and just being flexible. At the same time, it's completely understandable. Leaders are in the position that they are because they are tasked with driving business growth, right? So you have to make sure the bottom line is doing well. But I think with that, it's also making sure the people are okay.
Yeah.
So I think flexibility is a big one there. Obviously, then you see the other end of the spectrum where the RTO mandates are coming in, and that's all fine too. We did it once before, and it just depends on the business and what's a good fit. But I think with that, probably flexibility would be ideal, and I see it across, I guess, more indie agencies.
Yeah. Agree. Yeah, I hate the phrase. I'm sure you hear this a lot too. Like, we got to return back to normal. Like,
Yeah, what is
like,
normal?
God, and was what we were doing before 2020 normal? I don't think so.
Yeah. No,
Let's,
and I feel it was, like, at a tipping point. I just feel
yes.
like, we're kind of, I mean, we're getting real existential, but I feel like we're getting back to how things were before the pandemic in terms of, like, burnout and just, like, running a million miles an hour without stopping to catch our breath,
Yeah.
like, mentally, and the pandemic forced everyone to kind of slow down and adapt to working from home and things like that, and it's almost like it's like we didn't really learn our lesson,
Yeah.
but yeah, crazy times. I remember going to work like 3 days before I gave birth
Yeah.
to my first kid, like just
Oh,
waddling down the subway steps, and that was like normal, and maybe that is again now, but it's just kind of crazy to think about.
yeah. And does it have to be? Like,
Yeah.
surely we've come a long enough way to not have to do some of those crazy things that we used to have to do. Well, and I think just going back to the generational question, I think these younger generations aren't even going to accept it. They're not going to allow it. I mean, it'll be really interesting to see what the workforce looks like in a few years with more influence from them.
Yeah, 100%. And you know what? Something that my husband and I realized because he's also agency side and that's where we met. But do you remember the days where we didn't have laptops? We
Mm.
just had desktop stations?
Yeah.
Because I remember I'm like, no, a sick day meant a sick day. Like we couldn't bring our work home with us or anything like that. There was like just even from the parameters in place, we weren't able to force our way through sickness and
Yeah.
still work, but things are different now. Everything you can work from your phone, from your laptop. So, yeah, it's just a different landscape now.
I used to bring sweatpants to the office and put them in my desk drawer. So, like at 6 o'clock, I could put sweatpants on at least at the office because I knew I'd be there really late.
So smart, so smart.
Smart or really stupid? I don't know. Maybe I should have just went home. Who knows? All right, let's go back to the board. All right.
Okay, there is a science to numbers because I'm being drawn to number 11.
Okay, let's see. Okay, Campaign US just dropped its 2026 leading women list. Why does this list matter? And what can the rest of us learn from the women on it?
I think I immediately think of just some of the talk tracks I've heard over the years, even when I was at Adweek and we had like our women trailblazers list. And, people say, well, like, why does it have to be women trailblazers? Why can't it be that? I think maybe it's a hot take, but, the women in the workplace, we're not exactly advancing, like just after following the pandemic, following now with the RTO mandates coming back and layoffs. I mean, we've seen the statistics, women are being impacted by all of this. So it's important to champion these trailblazers that are really making a difference in the industry and getting recognized for it, because recognition also isn't always there. So the categories, I mean, I always get really excited. The vibes in the Inspiring Women room are just so fun and celebratory. Everyone's hyping each other up, the walk-up songs, it's just, and it's also you have the option to bring your kid, because it's bring your kids to work day so they can see, mom up there doing her thing, having a good home life and work life,
That's
like
right.
killing it in both places.
So cool.
Uh, but I think it's important because there's also different categories, it's women breaking barriers in media and technology, which is a male-dominated space still, it's not like these are all kind of equally created spaces. So it's so important to champion the people that are paving the way for the next few generations.
That's great. Well, you said a lot of the things I would have followed up with. I think just like in looking at the list, a lot of the commonalities, a lot of these women are in male dominated fields. They're innovating, they're bringing just like new, interesting things to market and ways of working. And just kudos to you guys for continuing to recognize them and bring their stories to the forefront. I think it's awesome and very inspiring for me as a woman to read about them and connect with them online as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's always like just a really inspiring event from Inspiring Women.
Awesome. All right, let's go back to the board.
Okay, I'm gonna go with number 1.
All right, behind number one.
Oh,
How is the industry really doing on diversity and representation? Are we making progress or are we just talking about it more? And what do you think still needs to change?
so this is a good question. I think we are advancing. Look, the conversation is still very much active. If the conversation was dimming down, quieting down or dimming, I would be more worried, but the fact is, ever since, kind of the last social reckoning that we had over the pandemic, like, these conversations really rose to the surface. They're still very much there from based on what we all saw and what we all heard and witnessed. Um, but there's definitely still more ways to go. I think the conversation is advancing, but I don't think it was advancing as fast as it was a couple of years ago. It's definitely scaled back, and this is, to marginalized communities and um, so I think the conversation is advancing, just not as fast. And there was a really great op-ed on Campaign. I think we made it free because it's like impact related. Anything DEI related, we, put in front of the paywall. Don't tell my bosses I told you. So with that, it was kind of like a post 2020. I believe it was someone from Duncan Shannon. Sorry, mentioning another agency on here,
That's
but
great. No,
uh,
we love agencies. Yeah, that's good.
yeah, and it was, kind of post 2020 reflection, what worked and what do we still need to do? And it was just a really great piece, and I recommend everyone going to take a look. And, just kind of what I just said is based on that. The conversation is advancing. And yes, we made a little progress, but there's still ways to go. I have hope though in just seeing the initiatives that some brands are doing, like a brand like Lush is so inspiring. Just kind of like and also, our multicultural agency of the year. I don't know if I should say it, but I was just
Say
reading like the
it.
well, this will come out, but confidential. It's Alma as the multicultural agency of the year. And they're a good example because, and you'll see in their write-up, they won some general market pitches and then added multicultural to it. So it just goes to show that some of these agencies and brands are thinking multicultural is mainstream because it is, and kind of looking at, you see it in the results, you see it in the business wins. So I have hope when I see things like that, when so many things feel like it could be going against the grain because of, the narrative coming from the administration, then you see like other marketers and agencies going against the grain and just doing what feels right.
That's incredible. Well, congratulations to Alma. I can't wait to read their write up. And I had Pedro Lerma on the podcast not that long ago, and he said some very similar things to me. And he's seeing some of those reactions in his business as well, where it doesn't have to start multicultural, but bringing a multicultural lens to it is a good business decision as well. And I just think the more agencies can start thinking like that, the better. From a brand side, are you seeing, you mentioned Lush, like what specifically are they doing or what's inspiring about them?
So with Lush, it's their brand pillars that they are, a brand that's all about advocacy and inclusion and using their platform to drive messaging to be more inclusive in the world. So and they live it. That's the big difference between Lush and like say other brands.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to bash any brands, but
Yeah, no.
with Lush, they even you would think they're just like a bath bomb brand,
Yeah.
right? They're not just a bath bomb brand. Like they use, an example is like and whether you agree with it or not, but they use their storefronts to so a recent one, a couple we've covered Julia Walker has covered a couple of their, initiatives, but I think it was when there was something with Governor Newsom and, they kind of rebutted that. They did something, I can't remember the specifics. And then most recently they took a stand against the anti-immigration
Mm.
sentiment, and just created, I believe, bath bombs like in honor of that. And, maybe it's just a bath bomb, but really it's about a brand with a platform that's not afraid to be inclusive and, speak its mind.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. We'll link to those articles too that you mentioned so everybody has access to them on your website.
Great. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I think it's a really important conversation, and obviously, it's an area that you have studied and have a personal passion in, and have for a while. So, I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
it definitely gives hope, especially in this past year with the anti-immigration sentiment. Like I'm a child of immigrants, so it's hard to read the news and not feel a certain way that could have been me 30
Mm.
years ago, like our doors being banged down on and I guess we just got lucky because of the time, that
Yeah.
we grew up in, but is it luck? It just should be like just basic human rights. But anyway, without getting too
Yeah.
political or existential, I think it's really important for these brands and these agencies to keep doing what they're doing and just not be afraid and be unapologetic about what they stand for.
Hmm. Great advice.
Thanks.
All right. I don't know where you're going next. I can't even predict. Let's see.
Okay, I'm gonna go for number 10 for
Number
Leo
10.
Messi. My kids love Leo Messi.
Awesome. All right. Here's a hot question. Do the three ad press giants actually get along?
In what way? This is you guys are stirring the pot.
Just a little.
I love it. No, that's a great question. I will say, in short, yes. We run into each other at events. It's not like we give each other the side eye or we're gonna do a dance off, or anything like that. We know the reporters at Ad Age. Obviously, I know the reporters at Ad Week. We look at what each other is bringing to the table, which I think is very different across all three. And I'm just gonna name like Ad Age and Ad Week as our,
Yeah.
the top two. No offense to the other ones, obviously I read Digiday and all the other
Mad
ones
love.
too, but
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, we do, in short, we do. I see us also like we kind of give each other flowers when there's like a good exclusive or things like that, begrudgingly, sometimes like it depends on who it is and it's but I remember like some of my former colleagues at Adweek have gotten some great high profile interviews. So why wouldn't I shout, Rebecca Stewart out for getting a cool interview with Colin Jost, and,
Yeah.
and things like that. So it's yeah, I'd say we all respect each other when we see each other in the room, and I'll leave it at that.
That's great. I mean, I can relate it to the ad agency side. It's highly competitive, but we're also very supportive of each other and we share. And I think we're all very giving of our time and our opinions and our connections and things like that as well. I've had many agency folks on the podcast actually, and I'm inspired by them, and I think they have fascinating stories. But we also pitch against each other, which is wild. But That's what makes this industry so fun, I think, too, is the people.
Yeah, no, I love that. When I first found out a couple of years ago when I was at Adweek how supportive indie agencies were to each other, like whether they were just starting out or, a couple decades down the
Yeah,
line, that really took me by surprise and also gave me hope that for the industry, just a camaraderie there, even though you are pitching against each other. But I do love that part of indie agencies.
same, same. All right, let's go back to the board.
Okay, yeah, making
You've
my
got
way.
two on each line here. I don't know.
Okay, I'm gonna go with number 7.
Okay. Let's go number 7. What emerging trends stood out in Campaign US Agency of the Year entries, and which ones do agencies need to jump on now to stay relevant?
So I can speak to the things that really made the applications stand out
Yeah.
for the winners. Because trends, I think it's in line with what we're seeing and what we talk about. But I will say the winners, the finalists who ended up getting like top honors, they had a nice mix of creative work and business results. Like at least in the judging group that I kind of popped my head in and was moderating, like the business results were really important. Now it depends on the judge, right? Like there were a couple, there were some judges that look at talent retention.
Mm.
You may have like a solid list of client wins, doing great, but did you lose half your people because you're burning them out? Like
Yeah.
the numbers speak for themselves. So, um, I will say the ones that rose to the top were good creative work. If there was a sizzle reel in there, obviously always helps. Strong performance, strong client testimonials. There were some client testimonials in there that were like, okay, you are not just phoning it in. You really work hand in hand with this agency, and it shows in the work and the business. So yeah, I would say those, and then talent retention and internal culture and key hires, where they came from, what impact have they had on
Mm.
the business. So all the wins, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so creative, results, retention, client testimonials. That's 4 key things that every winning entry has to have. That's good.
Yes, and also I know that, folks use AI for support, but the judges could tell that,
Oh, I'm
when there was,
sure.
like, completely when it obviously, comms teams are so much smaller now too, so
Mhm.
we understand that part. So if it's, like, a good mix, like, if you check all the boxes that we just mentioned and you needed a little boost from AI, fine, like, we're seeing it, but, yeah, I would say those are the key things that should be included.
So what do you do? Does it, like, get vetoed if it was clear?
No, I think we could just tell, like, okay, they just popped a couple of things in. I don't know. It needs to still have like kind of a human element because that's what this industry is,
Yeah.
right? Like if there's a comms person there that's able to inject life in it, it gets you excited about the work rather
Mhm.
than just like listing numbers and things like that. So I say that always helps.
Okay. All right. Great advice for next year.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back to the board. I think we have time for 2 more if you're game. All
Yeah.
right, let's do it.
Okay. I'm gonna go for number 3 is calling me.
Okay. Number 3. What does it actually take for a new campaign to break through in the press? And what do you think are missing in most pitches?
Great question. Great question. Um, there are pitches that come in where we're like, how did they think of that? And that's when we get excited, we're like, okay, we got to figure out a way to cover this, or at least, if anything, we'll include it in a roundup. But those are the pitches that get us excited. And the pitches that have that, I would say, are the ones that are tapping into culture. I know we've heard this so much, but if it's like just kind of like a genius play, like capitalizing on, some chatter and it shows the brand was able to move fast, they have the right people in place, they have like a flexible, agile model, and they were able to get it going. And those are the ones that you end up seeing, win the awards. But so those always kind of make us chuckle and we always want to do that. I think when there are campaigns that quote unquote hack
Mm.
platforms or kind of conversation and kind of own it, those are always good too. Um I'm trying to think of a good example. I can really only think of like the ones that we've all talked about for a couple of years, but uh I'm trying to think. Spotify, spread beats with FCB. I mean, that could have just been like a regular. I As a media buyer,
Yeah.
that campaign really spoke to me as a former media buyer because those Excel sheets will make you want to rip your hair out sometimes of the media plans. And then they found a way to make it interesting and they kind of hacked like Spotify's technology to do it. They worked with them. So those are always, I think those are super smart and worth covering if we can.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I think ones that are really strategic, not performative, obviously it's in line, with what you stand for. Those are always great. I think what pitches are missing these days and, it's tough, right? Small comms teams are blasting out these emails, like, we totally get it, but I think it always helps to put, why our readers should care. Sometimes we get pitches and it's like, it's you don't read our site,
Yeah.
because you would know that we don't cover this kind of stuff. And what is that? Like, an easy example could be, like, a new product that comes out. That doesn't have to do with marketing. Like if it's like a new toy that came out, part of like a TV show, things like that, unless it's like a McDonald's Happy Meal, where that was clearly the marketing team was involved. Like those are things that we're just not going to cover. So I think, just knowing the reader base and just knowing what campaign typically covers, and putting in there why it would matter to our readers, I think is always helpful, and it doesn't always have that. And then I think what some pitches are missing or just kind of that makes us wanna, like, rip our hair out also is if they're incomplete or too early. Like, I think it's totally understandable when, comms teams wanna be like, "Hey, we have something cool coming out, like, just a heads up," and that's fine, just kind of like it might leave our brains in an hour, but, "Okay, thank you so much for the heads up, like, you thought of us, you took the time, the 1 minute to, like, write this email, and give us a heads up."
Well, giving you a heads up, I think is interesting. What's too early for a heads up? Is that like a week before, or how early do you want it?
I think if the creative isn't final,
Okay.
it's
Oh, yeah,
it's
yeah, that's too
yeah,
early.
it could be really infuriating because, like, say this has happened a couple of times. It's not to call anybody out across a variety of like agency teams and, comms teams, but we'll just get like an email and be like,
Mm.
"Hey, this is happening like this weekend, blah blah blah." And it's like, okay, who's the agency that worked behind this? What's the creative look like? Are you going to be blasting this out on, the streamers this weekend? Like those are the key details. Like a lot of the time it's just incomplete. It's just like, okay, yes, you're excited because you were
You're
there,
part of yeah.
in the room, but we need to know the details. So I think if there isn't final creative or if details aren't really ready to be shared, um it kind of makes us lose a little bit of trust too in the comms teams, because we're a lean team. We're very intentional about what we cover, why we cover it, why we think our readers would care or should know about XYZ. And if we can't get to it, we look to our freelancers, who would be the best freelancer to write about this based on their expertise. So we really put thought into it. So then when we get those pitches that don't make complete sense or they're really incomplete,
Mhm.
it could be like a little bit frustrating.
Yeah, that makes sense. So when a pitch has everything, when it's got, a headline and it's got the creative and they've sent you the credits and, they've thought of every question and you still don't cover it. Is it because you guys just don't like the creative or
It could be a variety of reasons, sometimes we're just stretched so thin,
yeah.
and it's not like great, but I'm just being honest, we just can't dedicate a full write up to it, but we'll try to sometimes we do our best to respond because clearly, that was a pitch that how we prefer to receive it was complete. So we do our best to respond and be like, thanks so much for thinking of us, going to pass on it for now. And if people
Mhm.
ask why, if we have like a minute, we're happy to share feedback. Like Leslie, our brand marketing and creativity reporter, she's super direct and honest. And I know that teams are appreciative of it. And it's always in a respectful way, but it's like, candidly, this was a miss, or candidly, like this doesn't match up with, what the CEO was saying like a couple of weeks ago,
Mhm.
things like that. Um, so there's that part. And then it's just about resources, or uh, like simple reasons could be maybe one of the other campaigns picked it up,
Hmm.
or maybe like if it's a health campaign, MMM, they might already be on it, so then we'll pick it up, or same for PR week or things like that. So it
Yeah.
might be, we try to just make the best use of all the resources in Haymarket, and that could be why.
Love it. Well, it's always so thrilling when you see it come out into the world.
I
And,
know, I
and
see the comments on LinkedIn, like, people sharing it, and it really is such a feel-good feeling because, it's recognizing people for their work and they're feeling celebrated, so it's
yeah,
always like a win-win.
yeah. Awesome. All right. Last one. Where do you want to go?
Let's go to number 6.
Okay. Many industry experts think we are in an indie agency era. What do you think?
I do think so.
Hmm.
I do, and this is like a passion point for us. Obviously, the holdcos do great work, with the resources they have and things like that. They're, that's not to rag on them or anything, but indie agencies, you're always rooting for like the underdog kind of a thing, right?
Yeah.
And to see and yes, we're in a kind of golden era of indie agencies just simply because it's a ripple effect of everything that's gone on in the last year, right? Like with Omnicom's acquisition of IPG, and then there were layoffs, and then those people went off to start off their own shops, and things like that. It's just a natural progression of everything that we've seen. So, yeah, I think we are in that era, and it's really cool to see the ones that are really like working hard, surfacing to the top, or you see celebrated creatives and they're like, "Oh, they're opening this up or they're doing that, or I wonder what they're gonna do." So yes, we are in that era and it's a really cool time.
Yeah, agree. I can tell you from my viewpoint too. I mean, we're seeing it. We're seeing it in applications. We're seeing it in the types of opportunities coming our way. Like the vibes are high. Culture's never been more important or better. And I'm just super excited to see like how we can continue that momentum forward because we do believe, I mean, we were kind of started as can you have a New York type of agency in a Midwest town do really great work, but have a really great culture? Because, I mean, so much of what I experienced was you have to sacrifice culture for the work or the work for the culture. You're either at a boring shop making boring ass work, but you're making a lot of money and you don't have to work that hard.
Yeah.
Or you're selling your soul to the corporation, but you're making really great work that you're proud of. And like, is there a world in which you can do both? And I think this industry has proved that, in fact, can happen, which
Yeah.
I'm excited to be on this side of that.
I know, we're cheering for you guys. I was
Mm,
cheering for Hold Coast too, whoever's listening, but
that's right.
also the
That's right.
indie agencies.
Also, we're hiring. Just
Yes.
kidding. All right, my friend, this has been a total blast. We love to end each podcast with a little this or that. So, first thing that comes to mind, do not overthink it. This is just for fun. Are you ready?
I think so.
All right, here we go. Okay, writing or podcasting?
Podcasting.
Okay, interesting. Hosting a panel or running a jury?
Hosting a panel.
Okay. Coke or Pepsi?
Oh man, you're really stirring the pot. All right, I'm a Coke girly.
We're just getting started. All right, Coke. Ad age or ad week?
Do I get a pass?
I don't know. Do you need one?
Okay, I'll say just going back to my alma mater, I guess ad week, but campaign first, but
That's
ad
right.
week.
All right, Chris Hemsworth or Liam Hemsworth?
Chris Hemsworth, because I got to interview him.
I know you did. I know I saw the photo.
Yes.
Awesome. This was so much fun. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Ashley. This was a lot of fun. It's weird being on this end, but you made it a lot of fun, so thank you.
You did so good. If our listeners want to contact you, what's the best place for them to visit?
Sending a letter or something. I don't know.
By
That's
mail,
all
postal, by
Yeah.
owl?
By
Okay.
mail. Don't ship express. No, I would say LinkedIn is good. Email is good. It obviously I give people permission, like a few polite nudges is fine because my inbox just gets buried. But I would say email and LinkedIn are two key ways.
Awesome. We'll make sure your LinkedIn is in the show notes for people.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I guess I'll see you tomorrow.
Yes, we'll party then.
We
Thanks.
will party then. All right. Thank you.